Imagine you are at a Ghanaian chop bar buying a delicious meal. You order fufu for 10 Ghana cedis, a drink for 5 Ghana cedis, and a meat 3 Ghana cedis. Now here's a question for you. Does it really matter if you add fufu and drink first and then meat, or drink and meat first and then fufu? Well, it doesn't. Welcome back to Find XYZ, where we make math simple, fun, and practical. Today we are unlocking another property of number, which is known as the associative property. Now, what does it say? The associative property is all about grouping. It involves only one operator at a time. Additionally, it consists of 3 terms. In our previous video, we spoke about commutative property, where we stated that it involves only 2 terms and just one operator. In this instance, it involves just 3 terms and 1 operator. That is the only difference. So commutative involves 2 terms, but associative involves 3 terms. How does it work? Let's take a look at our first operator. That is the associative property of addition. Now, given 3 numbers, when adding, you can decide to add the first 2 numbers, which is A and B, and then C, or you can decide to add the last 2 numbers and then A. In both cases, we are going to have equal results. Let's take a look at our first example. Example 1. Given 3 numbers 2, 3, and 4, when adding, we can decide to group the first 2 numbers, which is 2 and 3, which will give us, when we add 2 and 3, it will give us 5 plus 4, that will give us 9. Then if another person also decides to add the last 2 numbers, 3 plus 4, which will give us 7 plus 2, that will also give us 9. So in both cases, we are getting the same or equal result. This is the handwork of associative property. Now let's focus our attention on the next operator, which is the associative property of multiplication. How does this work? In similar fashion, just a different operator. Given 3 numbers, we can decide to multiply the first 2 terms, or we can decide to multiply the last 2 terms. Notice the parenthesis is just grouping the first 2 or grouping the last 2. Let's take our example. Given 3 numbers 2 times 3 times 4, we can decide to multiply the first 2 numbers, which is 2 times 3, that will give us 6, multiply by 4, that will give us 24, or we can decide to multiply the last 2 numbers, which is 3 times 4, which will give us 12, times 2, which will give us 24. So the left hand side is 24 and the right hand side is also 24. Now listen, with associative property, it's telling us that we have the freedom to group any of the numbers that we want and it will not affect the result. One may ask, does it work for all operators? No. So let's see the operators that will not work for associative property. The first operator is subtraction. Let's look at an example. Given 3 numbers 10, 5, and 2, 10 minus 5 will give us 5. The minus 2 result in 3 as shown. Bring the last 2 numbers, 5 minus 2 will result in positive 3, and then 10 minus 3 will give us 7. You realize that grouping the first 2 terms gives us a result of 3, and grouping the last 2 terms gives us a result of 7, indicating that the associative property does not work on subtraction. Take note, the associative property does not work under subtraction. Let's take a look at another operator, which is the division operator. An example. Given 3 numbers 12, 6, and 2, we can decide to divide the first 2 numbers, which is 12 and 6. When we divide, we are going to get 2, and then 2 divided by 2, we are going to get 1. Now let's switch and focus on the last 2 numbers. This time we are doing 6 divided by 2 first, which will give us 3, and then 12 divided by 3, which will give us 4. In both cases, they are not the same. This indicates that the operator does not follow the associative property. So these two operators, which is subtraction and division, does not work under associative property. The associative property is your math superpower for addition and multiplication. It makes calculation easier and proves that math is logical and consistent. So next time you are adding prices at the market or multiplying quantities, remember, grouping does not change the answer. That is the magic of the associative property. If you found this helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. And don't forget, think, find, and shine. See you in the next video. Bye.